Hello, welcome back to my channel. Um, Hi, how are you? I actually feel somewhat tired these few days, this week especially. Today is a Friday. Actually, now it's already Saturday, because it's midnight right now, and I usually do my recordings at midnight. So yeah, it was Friday it was Friday an hour ago. And so yeah, this is Saturday. We're entering the weekend here, and I do feel a little bit relieved. But yeah, basically this week I feel like I've been experiencing this minor burnout. Burnout. It's just minor, I guess, because I think I can still manage it. It is still okay, but I could sense that certain aspects of like the works that I want to do, like my planning, have been sort of derailed because of that a little bit, and I'm just kind of like in the process of trying to seize back the controller. But yeah, this week has been a bit of a challenging, I would say, a challenging week. But I do have some nice books I want to talk about in this video, and yeah, fortunately, one of the things that helped me this week was the reading that I had for pleasure. And I'll be talking about two books in this video. Both of those books are translated fiction. Yay. The first one was by Fumiko Enchi. It's called A Tale of False Fortunes. Now, I don't have the book with me right now because I already returned this book to the library a few days ago. So I'll probably have a picture somewhere here or here. I don't know. Depends on where editing me is going to put it, if I remember. But yeah, A Tale of False Fortunes by Fumiko Enchi, translated from the Japanese to English by Roger K. Thomas. So this would be my third book by Fumiko Enchi. The first two books were marvelous reads. I really loved them. Both of them were historical fiction. The Waiting Years, Masks I read last year. The Waiting Years I read like in 2024. Yep. Absolutely wonderful stuff. This one also was incredible, and I would probably even say that in terms of the structure, in terms of form of the novel, A Tale of False Fortunes would probably be the best out of all three that I've read, because it has such an interesting experimental style to it. So I'll talk about that. But yeah, roughly what this book is about. This is a historical fiction set during the Heian period, and it centers around this the Japanese imperial family, specifically the Fujiwara clan, and so their reign sort of happened around the year 900 to 1000-ish. And the Heian period is actually a little bit longer than that. But this novel centers around the Fujiwara clan and kind of like the political machinations that some of the members were involved in order to gain more power in the imperial court. And the emperor at the time was Emperor Ichijo. And Emperor Ichijo was married to Empress Taisi, or Fujiwara no Sadako. And Empress Taisi would be the central character of A Tale of False Fortunes, this novel. And this is kind of like the part where it is very interesting. So when Emperor Ichijo was the reigning emperor, there was this plot in order to kind of put Empress Stacy aside, to kind of gently remove her from positions of power. This plot that was orchestrated by a minister called Michinaga. Now, Michinaga happens to be the uncle of both Empress Tashi and Emperor Ichijo. So the emperor and the empress, they are actually cousins. And so Michinaga, this minister, he is trying to just kind of like plan things such that Empress Tashi, who was also the daughter of his brother, Empress Tashi does not have much power, so that Michinaga can sort of transfer much of the power to his household instead. But the novel focuses more on how Empress Tashi just sort of reacts to this whole political scheming and plotting done by various people around her in this royal court. Now, there's actually a B plot in this book that kind of involves a young woman, a daughter of a spirit medium who was kind of inducted into the royal court as a lady in waiting, and she serves under Empress Tashi. And throughout her period serving her, she kind of goes into this personal journey of discovering love and relationship and feelings, romance, and all that. And things are kind of, low-key messy with this lady in waiting. Her name is Kureha. And as a B plot, it kind of complements what I consider the main plot, which is mostly what's going on, like the political scheming involving the royal family. So yeah, in terms of the story, right? In terms of plot, this book is kind of simple. As far as the events, the storylines that concerns the members of the royal court themselves. These are things that you could really glean through even in a Wikipedia page. Because many of the important events that happened to these individuals, these actual historical figures, were kind of explored in this book. But this book kind of explores those events through a slightly different perspective. It kind of skews a little bit more on Empress Tashi and her response, kind of centering her in all of these events. And talking about centering Empress Tashi, this is where the structure of this novel, which was really interesting to me, became like really important. So the things that I just described are just kind of like the main plot, like the core plot. But there's actually a framing story to this novel. So basically, it goes that the narrator of this novel is sort of like a literature scholar. And she recalls that a while back she found a book called A Tale of False Fortunes in a library of a scholar somewhere. And she was kind of fascinated by this book, this work of literature. because this work of literature seems to be a response to another work of literature, which was an actual work of literature called A Tale of Flowering Fortunes. So A Tale of Flowering Fortunes was, well, at least based on how this novel described it, was actually kind of like a work of literature that describes the accounts of the Fujiwara clan, especially focusing on Michinaga, who is portrayed as the plotting minister in this novel. But in that work of literature, like actual work of literature, right, A Tale of Flowering Fortunes, he is described as someone who he's cast in a more favorable light. Whereas, well, in comparison, someone like Empress Day, she was probably not written as, in glowing, perspective. And so it appears that to this narrator, the book that she found, A Tale of False Fortunes, was written in order to make Empress Daisy looks more sympathetic. But unfortunately, this book was lost, and the narrator wants to share the story, so she tries to kind of reconstruct the story based on what she could remember very well about this book. And as she writes this story, which is the book that we are reading right now, right, that I read, she also includes a lot of textual references to this fictional A Tale of False Fortunes, the real A Tale of Flowering Fortunes, and also the Pillow Book by Sei Shonagon. And it is just really interesting to read the story, because it kind of, in my opinion, just feels like you're seeing the line between like fiction and non-fiction being blurred. Like, what is real, what is not real, and the fact that there is this framing narrative just kind of makes it feel like it is trying to tell you, oh, you're reading a story within a story. There are these like layers of conceit going on with the narrative. It just makes it so engaging. It's like it makes it kind of makes you wonder, like, in which layer of reality are you actually living in? Because it appears that I live in this reality in which something like a Tale of False Fortunes probably does not exist, but apparently in this book it exists. So what version of the story am I reading? But yeah, it is just a really interesting book because of how it attempts to shift the perspective, shift the spotlight on a different character that was supposedly neglected in the historical account of this clan, as is written in A Tale of Flowering Fortunes. So yeah, there's that. Really fun stuff. Also, another thing I just kind of want to mention, this book has plenty of spirit possession as its plot point. And that part just kind of fascinated me a lot, because when I read Masks last year, that one had a lot of spirit possessions as well. This one, it has more, and it is so important, so integral to the plot and the development of some of its characters, that it kind of makes me feel very intrigued about about Japanese mysticism. So in this context, it is mysticism in an older era, right? In the past. So it's probably kind of different from the kind of mysticism that we could observe in Japanese society these days. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But yeah, seeing how spirit possessions is being used as the driver of the plot, it just kind of makes you think about the how real spirit possession is as it is being portrayed in this book. Like, it kind of presents a layer of unreliability, right? Especially when we pair it with the fact that this book also has tons of manipulation and plotting, and then you have spirit possession. Is it part of the plotting? Is it part of the scheming? There seems to be suggestions that says yes in this book, but it is left sort of, kind of vague, but there are also hints. The whole thing just feels really, really interesting. Kind of made me think. And so when I was reading it, I felt like I couldn't put it down. But when I started reading this book, I thought it was really difficult to get into. In fact, I actually bought this book like 4 weeks ago, but I only picked it up like 2 weeks ago. Because the first 2 weeks I was scared. I had no knowledge regarding the Japanese imperial family and their history, Japanese history in general. I just don't have much knowledge. And so it was kind of scary when I picked up this book and I read the first chapter, and I saw all of these names that I did not recognize. I was like, how could I expect myself to be able to penetrate this book? But eventually I was able to do that. It took some time for me to kind of keep track of the names of the characters / historical figures. But eventually I was able to kind of follow the story, and it was really rewarding. And I felt like by the time I finished reading this book, there was this kind of like a sense of accomplishment, I would say. And I felt like I learned a lot of new things as well from this book. So, yeah, there's that for A Tale of False Fortunes. I feel like I took quite a long time for this book. I think it's like 17 minutes. So, let's move on to the second book. This one is also kind of short. This is called Karnak Café by Naguib Mahfouz. So, this would be the second book by Naguib Mahfouz that I read. The first one was called Miramar, but honestly, I don't remember much from that book. I think I read that book during the time of COVID, so that was like at least 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, it was a long time ago. This book was translated by Roger Allen, and it was originally written in Arabic. Published in, let me just check very quickly. It was published in the 70s, 1974. So this book is about this narrator who frequents a cafe in Cairo. The story is set sometime in the 1960s in Egypt. And it is a historical fiction with a really interesting way of, again, framing the story. I think framings are like the core of this video. So what happens is that this narrator, he enjoys going to this cafe called Karnak Café in Cairo. At first, because he was kind of attracted by this, the proprietors of this cafe called Kurunfula, and once he sort of enters into this community of the cafe patrons, he begins to get acquainted with other customers who would hang out in this cafe as well. People ranging of different ages. There are people who are somewhat older, there are people who are somewhat younger. But as we read on, the interesting part, like kind of like the bulk of this novel, would focus on the younger individuals. And at the beginning, we learned that, through through the narrator, that these young people, they would sometimes be there at the cafe, and then suddenly they would be gone, and then after that they appear again, and then after that they're gone again. So there's this kind of like a mystery of what's really going on with these people. Like, why are they like there, sometime, and then after that they're gone for some time, and then they appear again. And so this novel takes place around the sometime after, like, I would say after 1967. But part of it, especially like the flashback that some of the characters explains, would also involves like sometime before that. And what I learned that was going to be kind of important for the historical context of this book is that in 1952 there was a revolution in Egypt, a political revolution that was so influential that it sort of causes some big changes to the society and politics in Egypt. And then in 1967 there was actually a war called Six-Day War, in which a group of Arab countries, they fight against Israel, that sort of resulted in the Israeli victory. And these two events are referenced constantly in this book. And we see how these younger characters, these young people, they sort of represent people who sort of lived through these two events, and how they respond to it, how these events changed them fundamentally, how they see the world, and how they interact with each other. Basically, it was a time in which there was some instability in politics, and there were also some kind of surveillance going on with the people. And with this surveillance, people kind of become mistrustful, and some people end up doing things that they don't want to do. And yeah, basically that's kind of like what the plot would eventually reveal about this time, this period of Egyptian history. And I, again, like the first book I talked about in this video, I didn't know much about this part of Egyptian history, or much of Egyptian history for that matter. And I felt like this novel was a nice introduction to that era, that piece of history, that kind of makes me feel more interested to find out more through other readings, other books, other novels, for example. But I also find it really interesting how this novel just kind of uses certain styles to tell this story. Now, one thing I find it interesting is that much of this book happens inside a cafe, and there is this. I have this impression that the characters in this book, they sort of represents groups of people instead of being like a full-bodied, fully fleshed characters in their own rights. There is a certain nebulous quality to these characters. They just don't make them feel super human-like, but rather they feel more like literary characters. I find that their interaction with the narrator in this book has this kind of dreamlike quality. There is a certain kind of strange dynamics that I find between these characters and the narrator, because it was through these interactions that the narrator gets to know about what really happens with these characters, especially the young characters. Like, I find it kind of suspicious that these characters are very open to the narrator in telling about their life story, or at least what happened to them during the periods of appearance and disappearance. So yeah, that is something that I find to be quite interesting. And another is that, you know, the fact that it is confined within a cafe, there is something about it that makes it feel kind of isolating. I'm not sure if that is the intention, or how that is relevant to, you know, the bigger themes, the bigger social or historical context of this book. But I certainly got that vibe, that there is some kind of isolation I could feel with this story being kind of mostly restricted within this cafe. So it's like, as far as the background of the story goes, I mean, there are certain scenes in this book that happens outside the cafe, but there are mostly scenes that were described through events recounted by the characters. But the present of this book, like the present time, they are within this cafe. And so there is this kind of like, I don't know, my impression is that there is something unreal about that. I don't know what you guys think. Let me know if you have any thoughts about that, because I do feel that is kind of intriguing. There's something that feels a little quite stylish about that, and I feel like there is something that is trying to say, but I still can't really place it right now. But usually that's what I kind of like with reading. You know, sometimes you read something and then you feel like, oh, there is something that you suspect is there, but you don't know what it is, because you don't have the knowledge about it, or you just don't know it yet. And this is like the situation that I have with Karnak Café right now. So yeah, those are my thoughts about Karnak Café, and I'm certainly interested in reading more by Naguib Mahfouz. In fact, I have a bunch of his books on my shelf right now. Yeah, definitely going to read more stuff by him. Unfortunately, I won't be able to read more novels by Fumiko Enchi. I think, I hope I'm wrong in saying that she only has 3 novels translated to English. But if I happen to be correct, I hope that eventually her other novels will be translated as well. I think there is a short story collection, but I'm not super enthusiastic about short story collections in general. But if I were, if I have the opportunity, sure, why not? Anyway, I guess those are all the books I want to talk about in this video. What am I currently reading right now? There's actually this one book that I just kind of want to show you. I think I mentioned this before. This is called In Praise of the Stepmother by Vargas Llosa. Okay, yeah, so I am only like halfway into this book. It is also another short book. Short book really helped me. This book was originally in Spanish, translated to English by Helen. So far, I found that this book to be kind of weird. It has a lot of eroticism in it, a lot of very graphic portrayal of bodily function. I like the writing. I like the writing. but at the same time, I'm also not feeling anything from the writing. Like, I felt like the writing just felt really distant and expressionless. But I like it. So what's the deal with that? I don't know. But anyway, let me just finish this one and see what my final thoughts are with this book. And so thank you for listening. It's half an hour, a lot of rambling in this video, but yeah, thank you for staying with me all the way until this part of the video. Yep, let me know what your guys are reading, and let me know how your days have been. I hope you're not burning out like me, and I'll see you again in a different video. Bye.